Hello, everyone. Let's wait for 5 more minutes before we begin and give like everyone else some time to join in. And yeah, we can start in 5 minutes. So till the time everyone joins in, what is one thing or one company that y'all would like to interview? If y'all could just add that in the chat box, or if y'all want to come off mute and say, oh, we have Spotify. Why would you like to work or interview with Spotify, Himal?
Because I am interested in experience design for music. For almost last 5 years, it has helped me to regain that mental strength and be mentally healthy. So that is why I want to keep on creating these waves of healthy mental life for people through music.
Wow, that's interesting. So, yeah, one company that I would love to work with one day is Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. So the reason being, I have wanted to explore, like, I want to explore social impact design, and I'm very passionate about social impact. So that's my answer. Anybody else would want to answer? Okay, let's wait for 2 more minutes and then maybe we can start.
I can come down.
I guess we can start now. So let me just share my screen. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, so today, as a part of CVIT, our mission is to empower women and people from underrepresented communities to pursue careers in technology, and we regularly conduct workshops and events. So I will add the links to the center's mailing list where you can stay updated about the center's events. And yeah, so excited to have you all here. And my name is Sejal. I'm the lead intern for the web design team. We have eBay and Nasir on the team as well, but they could not be here. So before beginning the event, I would love for y'all to register or sign up for the center's mailing list so that y'all know when the center does events, and y'all can also be a part of center's Facebook page, where we also keep updating resources and about the event. So without further ado, let Simran introduce herself, and you can take it from there, Simran.
Okay, thanks, Ajal. I'll just share my screen. Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen. So hello everyone, I'm Simran and I'm actually pursuing my master's in human computer interaction at Indiana University Bloomington. So I've actually received offers from Facebook, Amazon and PwC for their summer internship, and I'm going to be an incoming product design intern at Facebook this summer. Uh, so before we start with the portfolio presentation, which is what we are going to talk about today, let me give you a very quick overview of how the typical UX design interview process kind of looks like. So everything starts with an application, and if the company you're applying for likes your resume or your portfolio, they'll either send you a design challenge, or the recruiter sometimes like calls you directly, and then they talk about your background, your experiences, why do you want to work at the firm you've applied at, and things like that. So if your background and experiences kind of match with what the job description is, then they'll proceed to the final round, which is mostly a portfolio presentation or an app critique, a whiteboarding challenge, a behavioral round. Sometimes it's a combination of two of these interviews, sometimes it's all of them. So today we are specifically going to talk about portfolio presentation, because I have seen, so both of my interviews at Facebook and Amazon, both of them had portfolio presentations. And all of my friends who are like interviewing recently, all of them had to kind of do portfolio presentation as one of their interview processes. So we are going to talk a little bit about that, how to make portfolio presentations, what you should include, what you should not. So all the tips which I'm going to be presenting you today have kind of worked for me, and I've used them for my slide deck or my portfolio presentation in Facebook and Amazon. So let's kind of get started by seeing what exactly portfolio presentations are. So in portfolio presentations, I think these are kind of the final rounds of your at least UX design internship interviews. And this is where you go ahead and present your past work projects or any projects which you have in your portfolio to the interviewer, and you demonstrate what your design process is, what sort of design decisions you've taken, and what was your learning and experiences from these projects which you've done. So typical portfolio presentations are around like 30 to 60 minute ish. And in those 30 to 60 minutes, you introduce yourself and you present some of the portfolios, some of the projects from your portfolios. So you can, in this 30 to 60 minutes, present one or two projects. So if you're allotted like 30 minutes, you can go with one project and dive deeper into that project and talk about like your process, the design decisions. If you have like 45 to 60 minutes, you can always like present two projects. For both of my present portfolio presentations at Facebook and Amazon, I presented two of my projects, but if you are super confident with one, you can definitely go with one, and that's completely okay. And mostly these portfolio presentation interview rounds happen virtually, but because of COVID, actually, and before COVID, they used to actually happen on site, where the company used to kind of fly you to their office, and then you present your portfolio to a panel of interviewers who are there sitting in front of you. Well, so how exactly do you present your portfolio? So you can either use a slide deck, or you can actually present it on your portfolio website, which all of you all have or are currently making. But I would actually highly recommend using a slide deck, and that is something which I also had done, because you can customize your slide deck for literally each and every interview you can give. The interviews can get detailed view of what your project is. So, your portfolio can be on the web, can be an overview of everything you've done in that project, but your slide deck can be a super detailed view of what that project is about. And using a slide deck, actually, you can very easily go back and forth between the slide deck. When you're actually presenting, the interviewer can write down what the slide number was, and if they have to ask you questions in the end, they can always tell you, oh, can you go back to slide number 3, and I have some questions on that. So it makes that process easier as well. You can literally take control of the interview by telling exactly what you want to show. So what happened in my Facebook interview was I had 2 projects to present and I was literally running out of time. So I presented my first project fully, but I did not have a lot of time to present all of the slides in my second project. So I quickly decided that, oh, I'm going to show only a few things from my second project. So I directly jumped to that slide and I just showed that part of my entire slide deck which I created for that project. So that is again something easy to do when you actually have a slide deck in hand, and it looks consistent. So if you're doing it virtually, it's okay, but if you get a chance to actually be on site and do the presentation on site, you don't know what screen size you'll be presenting your project on, so websites can get a little bit messy that time. So it's always better to have like slide decks because they are so consistent on all the screen sizes. So I know I'm going super fast, but if you all have any questions, just put them in chat, and we have like some time reserved at the end to answer questions and questions which you guys have. Well, so the next thing is choosing which projects you have to present in your portfolios. Well, what I did was I had around 4 projects in my portfolio which I really wanted to present, and choosing them was, I would tell you, a super difficult task for me. So what I did was I started by researching the firm I was interviewing for. So it was Facebook. So I decided, oh, Facebook has a mobile app, and that was something which I was interviewing for. So I selected projects which had mobile as a platform, and because that kind of demonstrated my skills as a designer working on mobile. You can literally research what the firm is about, what is the current challenges they are facing. Do you have any projects which are currently in line with the challenges which the firm has, and you can actually go ahead and present those. If the firm focuses a lot on visual design skills of a designer, then probably present projects where you have worked a lot on the visual design, where you can talk about like grids or menus, or design decisions where you have made choosing certain design elements over the other. So when you research the firm, you understand what exactly they are looking for. Probably read the job description and see what kind of projects you have which match the job description which is currently in your hand or for that company, and that'll help you choose the projects very properly. What I also did was I chose projects which had some real life impact. But so I had 2 projects. One was a project which I did for my previous company where I was working for, and one was a personal project. In the entire presentation, I made sure that I highlighted the impact, because that goes a long way. Impact always like validates the designs which you have made. So it's always good to choose projects which actually have some sort of impact. Um, Also choose projects which kind of had some significant contribution, where you probably like designed an entire flow, or you probably led the entire design process, so that you kind of have a lot of things to talk about when the interviewer asks you any questions about the project. And the project can literally be work project, a personal project, or a school project. I myself showed a personal project and a work project, where like the main project I actually spoke about was a personal project of mine. So I've seen that a lot of people say that, oh, you have to present a work project, but it's completely okay if you have a school project or a personal project too. Like it's totally fine. So the structure of your portfolio presentation. So the first 5 minutes of your entire portfolio presentation round would be introductions. So the interviewer would talk a little bit about the company, how the design process at the company is, and what exactly are they looking for in an intern. And then they'll give you a chance to introduce yourself. So you can do that for around 5 minutes. You can talk about how did you get into design, what are some things you like about design, what is exactly your story. You can literally speak about your experience, where all you worked, and what was your background in. If you have transitioned to design, what was the story of transition, and what do you do other than design. So try to make it a little friendly. Don't be like so professional that you just talk about your design and then your career. I kind of talked a little bit about how I came from this very small town back in India, and I kind of made a joke on that. So, you can be a little light over here and try to, get that very friendly vibe with your interviewer. That would really help you, kind of be comfortable in your entire interview. So I would say one mistake I did in the introduction in my Facebook presentation was I spent a lot of time in the introduction. So when I was practicing it all by myself, it was like, oh, this is what I have the script prepared, and I was just going to talk that. But when I was actually talking to the interviewer also had some questions for me, yes, in the introduction. So that kind of took a little bit of time, and it just became more than 5 minutes, and I think because of that I wasn't able to complete the portfolio presentation. So try to keep it like a little concise and crisp, so that you have enough time to talk about the important thing, which is the projects. So the next 15 minutes which you have, you can dedicate them to projects. This 15 minutes time frame will vary depending on how much time you have allotted for the entire interview. So if you have 30 minutes, then you can spend 15 minutes, but you would have to present like one project. I had 45 minutes, so I had like I thought of 15 minutes for one project, 15 minutes for the second project, and then the final 5 to 10 minutes is usually a question and answer session, where the interviewer would ask you some questions about what the projects were. They'll ask you, why did you make certain design decisions? Why is this the color of your app? Why did you choose a mobile application in the first place? And things like that. So they'll try to focus a lot on the whys of every design decision which you have made throughout your design process. And you be prepared with some questions you want to ask the interviewer. So you can ask about the internship program, what the interns would work on, what the design culture is of the company, how is the process, how is the evaluation. So be prepared with a set of questions which you can ask to the interviewer as well. So now let's try to focus on that 15 minutes where you have to present one project. So what exactly should you highlight in that 15 minutes? So firstly, you can talk about the project, what your project was about, and why exactly did you decide to solve this problem. I feel that context, or giving context of the problem or the project which you're working on, is super, super important. If you just start with, the design process and I just did some research, it would be like the interviewer would have that question that, what exactly are you solving? So it's always good to establish the context whenever you're making the presentation. The second thing I would say is highlighting your role and contribution. So the portfolio presentation is literally about you. It's not about your project. The interviewer is not going to evaluate, what your project is, how complex it is, or do you have the right solution, which in the entire project, right? They are going to evaluate you as a designer, what your role was, and what your contribution to the entire project was. So just try to highlight that a little bit more. So if you worked as a UX designer, what exactly did you work on? What was your contribution? Sometimes you do work as a UX designer, but you are involved in the branding, you're involved in making the logo, you're involved in making the design system, the visuals. So just talk a little bit about that I was the UX designer, but I was involved in all of these different I would say aspects of the entire project. So that kind of helps the interviewer also understand that yes, she can do a lot of things other than simply UX strategic designer wireframes. Then you have to talk a lot about teamwork and collaboration. At least for Facebook, and I feel most of the companies out there, they do value your teamwork and collaboration a lot, because when you go and when you work as an intern, you'd be collaborating with the developers, the PMs, I don't know, the other designers in the team. So it is super important to kind of highlight the collaboration aspect, like how did I hand over my designs to the developer who was designing? If I have many designers who are working on the same project as me, how did I, manage that design process? How did I make sure that the design was consistent if all of these designers were working on the same problem? How did I collaborate with the PM? And how did, if you're working in a design studio, then how did you present your designs to the client, and how did you take feedback? All of these questions about collaboration, you should kind of try to address them in your presentation. That shows that you're a team player, you know how to collaborate with everyone who's there in the team. So then I would come to the problem which you are trying to solve. So again, it's super important to mention and to make it clear that what was the problem you're trying to solve. Sometimes we get so involved in the design process that we try to focus a lot on the process. Oh, I did this research, I had used these this ideation method for brainstorming and all these things. In all of that, we forget what the problem was. So probably make one slide where you literally just write the problem, and make sure that you say that, oh, this was the problem I was working on, this is what I was going to solve. And try to also tell that, why did you choose that problem, and why did you decide to solve that particular problem. uh, then after you have established the problem, you can say that, how did you solve the problem. So this is where your process comes into picture. So what was the approach you took when you encountered this problem, and why exactly did you do so, what, and here also you can mention what the final outcome was. uh, Another very important thing which I feel should be highlighted in the entire portfolio presentation is some decisions and trade-offs which you made during the entire design process. So, it's not always like you have an idea and then you just work on that idea, right? You have multiple ideas and you select one idea. Even in that idea, there are a lot of things which you work on. So, for example, deciding what menus you want to choose. Do I have to use a hamburger menu, or should I use a tab bar? And things like that, smallest design decisions which really make a difference. You can also like show them that, oh, this was one idea, this was my second idea, but I decided to go with second idea because I decided to not go with the first idea, because that kind of shows that you can think. You know that you know how to value, like evaluate the ideas which you have in hand. It shows that you have done some sort of testing and some sort of iteration. So I feel that again, decisions and trade-offs are super important to highlight within that project, in that 15 minutes when you're presenting your project. And another super important thing is telling what did you learn throughout that project. So I think most of us here are students and we are going to be interns, and every design or every project which we do is always, there is always some sort of new thing which we learn from that project. And it's very nice to be honest about what I learned or what would I do differently in these projects. It shows that from project to project, you're growing as a designer, you're learning new things, and you're understanding how to be in the design process. And that kind of shows the interviewer that you are not somebody who knows everything, but you are somebody who is willing to learn at all stages in the process. So again, that is something which is important to highlight. uh, and then going ahead in that 15 minutes, what should be a common structure for presenting your portfolio? So one common structure which is there, which I think is very common, is that people start by explaining what the problem was. Then they kind of give the gist of the solution. They also highlight their process, like I did research, define, design, iterate, and test. Then they show all the different methods and outcomes of each stage of this process. They talk about then the next steps and their learnings. But I kind of did this a little differently. So how did I structure my presentation? So I basically started, I kind of took a little bit of a storytelling approach where I did not stick with the typical structure of the portfolio presentation, but I decided to tell the story of my project. So I started with an introduction and overview of the company I was working for, or the product I was working for, which I'm going to be presenting. So for example, this is the company which I worked for. They do they sell some things, and this is the business model and this is how they operate. So that kind of again establishes a context of the project you're working on. Then I spoke a lot about my role and contribution. because again, the entire portfolio presentation interview is not about your project. It's not about how complex your project or problem is. It's not about did you get the right solution, but it's about how were you as a designer in this entire project. So highlighting your role, saying that, oh, I was the UX designer, I did these all things, these were the deliverables. That is super important, so that the interviewer knows that, okay, you are the right candidate I'm looking for. Also, again, contribution. So one of the project I was working on, I was the only designer who was there in that project, and I was the UX designer, but I also was involved in branding. I also made like promotional videos for them because there was no one else to do it. I also did some graphics. In one project, I literally made the logo. So, all of these small things, it shows that, okay, so there were some responsibilities which you had, but you are somebody who kind of goes above and beyond to complete all the other things as well. So just kind of give an overview of that in your contribution. After that, I gave a very quick overview of the process. I did not dive very deep into it, because everybody says that, oh, my process was research, design, ideate, and all those things. It's very common, and it is the base structure for literally any of the projects. So I said that yes, this was the base structure, but this was definitely not linear. Like, I had a lot of iterations in that, and I just like gave a very quick overview of that. I did not spend a lot of time in the process. um, what I did was I tried to explain the story of the presentation, story of the project which I was working for. And then through that story, I decided to highlight my design process. So it was like hidden inside the story I was telling. So I started my story basically by first of all saying the context of use in the design space. So for example, something like, oh, there was this company, they had an amazing business model, their customer service was so good, but their website was not working properly because the aesthetics were not good, the usability was not good, and things like that. So that kind of helps establish the context and the why of the problem which you're working on. So why did you choose to work on this problem, or why were you hired in that company in the first place? So so context is again super important over here for the entire story actually. Another thing I did in one of my projects was I explained the context with the help of the target demographics. So the context was there. I used the target demographics to form a story around it. So, this is my target demographics. So, it's probably students who are, living alone. Then how would they, one of my projects was a budgeting app. So what is the problem they are facing, and why would they exactly use this budgeting app? So this again, using target demographics and context, giving a personality to your target demographics, helps you form that sort of a story which you can take through the presentation, and it literally makes your presentation super interesting, instead of just saying that, oh, these were my research methods, this was my design, and all those things. Then when I had my target demographics and the context established very properly, I spoke about what did I exactly do to find out the needs of the users. So here I didn't say that I conducted research, but I said that I wanted to find out the needs. That is why I went ahead and interviewed people. So yes, you that is in the end research only, but you form it in a way that it connects together. So you don't say that, oh, I did research, but you say that, oh, these were the target demographics which I was aiming to talk to. So that is why I conducted this research method. So again, highlighting the why is again super important. Then when you conducted that sort of research, you talk about the problem which you uncovered through that research. And now you have the problem. You can also talk about the design challenge for you as a designer through that problem. And now this is when you actually start the solution. In my both of the presentations which I had, I did not mention anything about the brainstorming methods or any of the ideation processes which I took. I decided to, because that was not very relevant to the story which I wanted to tell. So I just said that, we had done it, like we had done some sort of brainstorming. I didn't go into the details of that. I just said that, because of this was the basic idea which I decided to choose. Then I spoke about why I decided to choose that basic idea. So, for example, I had decided to I had decided to work on a mobile application. So I didn't tell about all the other basic ideas which we had. I just said that this was the mobile application which I was going to focus on. I said why mobile application, because everybody is mobile is a device which is accessible to everybody, and we wanted people or students to have that budgeting app on everybody's phone and they can access it literally anytime. So I kind of gave a rationale behind the very basic idea which I was choosing, and I kind of did not give any sort of other ideas like a desktop application or things like that. The base idea was just one because I wanted to keep the story around that base idea. uh, then what I did was, because this particular project I was working on was so huge, I decided to take one flow and explain that in detail. And I feel that that is what the interviewers kind of want. Again, it is not about the project, but it is about you. So you can definitely take out one very important flow in your entire project, which is there, which you think is super relevant to the context which you have established or the target demographics which you've established. And then you start talking about why did you design the flow the way it is. So for example, I have this dashboard on my mobile screen. I designed a dashboard because of some reasons. Then you move on to the next screen in the flow. I have the very important CTA at the center of the page because, then I have the hamburger menu used because, and all of these things. So again, you don't tell the interviewer that this is what I did, this is what I did. You try to highlight why did you do all these things. So that kind of helps the interviewer know that, oh, this person has really thought about like literally every element which is there in the design, and they are just not designing just for the sake of it. uh, so then when I had this flow established and when I told the interviewer about the flow, I decided to dive deep into that particular flow. So the first dashboard which I presented to the interviewer, I told him that, this was not how it started. So I showed the very first or the very basic sketch of what my first iteration looked like. And then I said that, oh, I showed this first iteration to my team, I showed it to the user, and then they pointed out a few problems. So that is why I came to the second iteration. This also had certain problems. So that is why I came to the third iteration. And here I also highlighted that it was just not these three iterations, but there were many in between. But just for the sake of this presentation, and because we have so less time, I'm just going to present like 1, 2, 3 iterations. So that kind of shows that you're not somebody who just sticks to one solution you have in mind, but you're somebody who's open to taking feedback. You understand what the users are. You keep the user, you are involved in the user centric design process. So you keep the user in your mind when you're designing something. You take a lot of feedback from the team as well as the users, and you make sure that your design is for the users and not for you as the designer. I think in both of my interviews at Facebook and Amazon, I was asked a lot about the testing of my iterations. So they asked me a lot of questions about, how did you go and test the iterations? How did you go and decide, what that particular, why did you, with whom did you test? Then, how did you, what was the method of that testing? So all of these things, be prepared with, some answers, and it is okay to be honest. So one of the personal projects I was working on, I did not have access to a lot of users. So I told that, I decided to test it with my friends and family because, this was a personal project which I was working on, and I did not have like a lot of people around me to test it. So I just went to a few of my friends, I showed them the app, and I asked them, what they think about it. I made the prototype and I told them to navigate through the prototype and what was their reaction. So I was a little honest about my process, but it showed that yes, I had collected some feedback on it, and yes, I was keeping the user in my mind when I was doing testing. So after that, I spoke about how did I improve based on the results of the test, and how did I arrive at the final solution. And the next most important thing which I spoke about is the impact. So impact, yes, I spoke a lot about the quantitative impact, the results of the usability test. And for one of my projects, we were actually using Google Analytics to track what the website was. So I had shown some metrics from Google Analytics as well, but I had also shown qualitative metrics. So if you have a school project, you can also show some user codes, saying like what did the user think when they were actually using your app. I did that for my personal project, and for the work project I actually showed some of the I would say customer testimonials from Google actually, and that kind of really helped strengthen the entire design decision which I made, and it validated it, saying that yes, she's saying that the user liked it, but yes, I can see that the users liked it. And again, I focused a lot on the next steps and reflections. I talked about all the failures I had. I talked about how I was somebody who was new to design and I did not know a lot of things. And, I really like worked on my weaknesses, and, how I converted my weaknesses into my strengths. So again, because this entire interview is about you and it is not about the project or the process, next steps and reflections, or what you learned and what your experience was, is super super important. It helps the interviewer understand that through this project you've grown as a designer. I would just like give some tips to create a stunning presentation, which I had kind of used throughout both of my interviews at Facebook and Amazon. So first, again, I'm stressing a lot on this, but this is super important, that explaining your role in detail and responsibilities is super important. Then we have to like explain again the collaboration aspect and who your teamwork was. So at the start of the presentation, you can always say that this was my team. I worked with a few designers, I worked with a few developers, I worked with the PM. But also throughout the presentation, you can put in some things like, oh, okay, my design was ready, so I did something to transfer to hand my designs off to the developers. Or during testing, you can say that, oh, this is where I showed my designs to my PM, and we brainstormed on the design which I made together. So you don't just say about collaboration at the start of your project, but when you're talking about your project in that 15 minutes, you can also add some points from your side where you kind of indirectly show that you've collaborated with other designers or developers or the PM. Yeah, again, I feel that it's super important to establish the context, because design process is going to be kind of the same for literally everyone, but context is super important for your story to go ahead. If you don't have that basic context, or why was that problem even existing, why did you decide to solve that problem, that's not going to help. That's actually going to help your story. And if you have the context in place, they'll understand that, oh, this, I know that this is why she started to solve this problem, and I know that, oh, this is why she had this solution which she's talking about right now. So context is super important. Then yeah, prepare yourself for last minute changes. When I was actually interviewing for Facebook, that was my very first time doing a portfolio presentation ever. So I had prepared a very nice slide deck. I had prepared introduction, and I was ready for last 10 minutes as Q&A, but it was a surprise for me, because the interviewer started asking me questions in the middle, and I had prepared my entire presentation. I was in the flow, and I was like, I knew what was going to come next, but he was like interrupting me and asking me all these different questions. And you have to be prepared for changes like that. Sometimes I've actually learned from a lot of other interns that there are some circumstances where they'll actually tell you that, oh, skip your entire slides of the process and just show me the visual design, just tell me that why did you do certain designs. I had spoken to a few interns who also told me that they tell you, oh, okay, fine, your slide deck is okay, open your Figma file and show me the designs which you have made, and let's talk about why did you do a particular design, show me your sketches and things like that. So be prepared for all these changes. Don't stick to the structure which you've made, but try to be a little flexible with it. Yeah, again, super super important. Make the problem you're working on very clear, and keep reminding it to them throughout the presentation. So what happens in this presentation interview is that the interviewer is listening to you. You are presenting your project to the interviewer. The interviewer is listening, and simultaneously they also have a form which is open on their site, and they are literally like writing down what they think about you in that form. So they are not fully into your presentation. So sometimes a few slides might get missed. Sometimes they might be filling the form. That is when you explain the problem. So it is super important to remind them that this is what I'm working on. So this is where that heuristic comes into picture of recognition over recall. You always tell them that this was my solution. Do you remember the problem which I told? This was the problem and this is the solution. So if you keep reminding that throughout the presentation, the interviewer would also know, and it'll help them understand your presentation a little bit better, and you're also providing a good experience to the interviewer throughout the presentation. Again, yes, portfolio presentations are all about diving deep into one project, but do not present something which is not relevant. So if you have many ideas, many initial ideas which you have brainstormed on, for example, I had thought of a mobile application, I also thought of a watch, I thought of a desktop application, I thought of some very different ideas. You don't need to present all of them. Stick to the basic idea which you had decided first, because that is what is relevant, and then try to explain the design decisions in that idea. Don't try to kind of give the breadth of all those things which you did in the process, but try to dive deep into one of the aspect of that process. Again, show iterations and highlight the design decisions. Don't just go and show like, oh, these were my wireframes, these are the visual designs which I made. Just don't show the final designs then and there. Tell that this was the final design, yes, but this was not the first design which I made. This was the first design I made. This design had certain problems. That is why I had the second one, and that is why I had the third one. So that shows that yes, you're taking feedback, you're iterating on the process, and that also highlights that how you think about design. So it kind of shows all of those things too. It highlights your product thinking. Again, super important, one mistake which I used to make a lot, which was using we when I was speaking about the presentation. Please do not use the word we when you're talking about your projects, even though you are not the only, even if you are working in a team of designers. The interviewer is really interested in knowing what you did and not what the other designers with you did. So even if there were many other people with you in the team, try to say that, okay, I collaborated with them, but this is what I did. And try to make your entire presentation about you instead of, the other designers or, what we did as a team. But you can say that, yes, this is what we did as a team, but my contribution to this was something. So try to highlight your contribution a lot more than others in your team. Again, one super important thing which I had learned was keeping the deliverables and the sketches in a different section called appendis. I feel that presenting deliverables and like journey maps, information architecture, initial sketches, all of this in your presentation is like it'll just make your presentation too long and it might not be very relevant. So if the interviewer has to ask for them, you do have them in your slide deck, and you can usually like jump to this different section and you can like just show it to them later. Again, metrics and impact are super important. If you have a school project and you probably do not have metrics and impact, you can still talk about the usability testing which you've done. I tested a school project with probably four users or four target audience which I was designing for, and out of them 3 liked it. So these are some metrics which kind of bolsters your entire presentation. It says that yes, the design which you made are right, and it kind of validates it. Along with metrics and impact, I felt that it was super important to include customer testimonials and testimonials of your colleagues. So I collaborated in both of these projects with developers and PMs, and I felt that it was super super important to show that. So all of like my colleagues from my previous work had kind of given me recommendations on LinkedIn. So I kind of took screenshots of them and presented and added them in my presentation, and I showed that yes, remember I'd said that I'd collaborated with everyone. This is what they said right now. So I kind of like had these recommendations, which again spoke about me and my collaboration capabilities, and how the developer felt about me, how the PM felt about me, and all these things. And
We have a
yes.
question. For a passion project, how to show quantitative data to demonstrate impact?
Yeah, so for my very first project, which I had presented, was a passion project, and I had actually conducted usability testing with 3 or 4 of my friends. So I showed it in this way, like I conducted usability testing with 4 target audiences, and out of that, 3 people were successful in completing the task which was assigned to them. So all this way you can actually quantify the outcome of your project. So yeah, I kind of did that for the passion project which I was working for.
What is a passion project is a question.
So it's a very nice question actually. So you know do you have any problems which you face in your everyday life, and you think that there needs to be a solution for that, or is there something which you and your friends have thought of working from a really long time? That is something which you can take. Like I have been doing this one project with a few friends of mine from engineering, and we'd always thought that this is the problem which we think is existing and we need to solve it. So that was all of our like a problem which all of us had seen which exists, and we thought that there was nothing which solved that. So that is why we decided to go ahead and solve that problem. But so passion project, I would say, is something which you probably see a problem which is there, and you want to be somebody who solves that problem. So I think that is what a passion project is. uh, Sejal, I'm just completing the 2 slides, and like I have a last slide afterwards, and then we can like take all the questions.
Okay, sounds good.
So yeah, my second last tip would be to show failures. So in I think all of us want to highlight what we did, and everything what was nice in the entire presentation or the process or the project. But it is super important to show failures. For example, I had shown it in a way like okay, I had never done a visual design project all by myself, so I was very excited. I started with the visual designs, but then I realized that okay, the designs are not consistent. So yes, I failed over there. Like I failed to make the designs consistent. But after that, I practiced a lot on my visual designs. I learned about design systems, and then I made all these design systems to actually ensure consistency in the entire app. So highlighting failures is again super important. And my very last advice would be to practice a lot. Like I literally took everybody who I met and I showed them my portfolio presentation. I think Sejal, she's my roommate, and I literally caught her like I don't know how many times, and I practiced with her. I literally went to my professors. I picked out a few friends from India also, and I showed them my presentation. I practiced with literally everyone I could find, because that really helped me, get that confidence for my final interview. And yeah, that actually sums up everything. And before we actually go into question and answers, um, I have been somebody who, I know that interviews can be so, so stressful. And, I know that probably there are very few resources available, how to create like presentations or app critiques and things. So I would say if you want any help, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. You can always like, I have this Calendly link over here. You can like literally scan the barcode and book a session with me, or you can message me on Slack or LinkedIn, and I would be super, super, super willing to help you all. Like, I literally want to help because I know how stressful these entire interviews can be. And yeah, we can take questions now.
First of all, thank you so much for the presentation, Simran. It was super helpful and it was very detailed, and I'm sure it must have helped everyone. Coming to the questions in the chat box, we have one question, which is there any difference between presenting a UX project and a UI project?
Yes, there probably. Are you asking in terms of like what you should include in the presentation, or how would it be for the interviewer?
Yes. How would you present, I guess, is what they've written.
Okay, so probably in a UX design process, I would highlight on, okay, I use this button. Why did I use that button at the center of my page? So that because it was the primary action, I decided to place it on the center of the page. A very broad level of UX design would be, I decided to go with this flow because I decided to put one step in front of the other step because, so, all of these decisions, I decided to give feedback after every transaction was added because, and UI design could be a little bit about, what colors did I use and what sort of grid system I used and what sort of typography I used. Why did I use that typography? And then you can also talk in UI design a little bit about the placement of certain design elements. So for example, why did I place the button where it is, or why was this paragraph over here, and why was this section probably why was this section so small, why did it have to be so wordy, or why did it have to be concise, and all these things like that. So I think yes, there is a lot of overlap between these two, but if you're highlighting visual design, then you can talk about these small visual decisions like colors and using design elements. Facebook kind of does focus a lot on visual design, so I had studied a lot about iOS and Android design patterns, and I spoke a lot about how I use these different guidelines which are there, which are existing, and how did I make an app to balance both of these guidelines. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
We have another question. Lillian asks, does intern applications have design challenges? Could you talk more about design challenges, the form, and how to deal with it?
So sometimes there are design challenges. So most of the interviews which I have given actually start with a recruiter call, and then there's this final round of a portfolio presentation or an app critique or a behavioral round. But I have seen that yes, there was one company which had a design challenge, so they sent out a design challenge to everybody, and the design challenge is a simple design prompt which you have to like submit, which you have to submit a solution to in like 1 or 2 weeks, and then the designers in the team like evaluate your solution. In this design challenge, you kind of have to start with research, and then brainstorm on solutions, and then present how, why did you choose this particular solution, and this is why I made a particular decision. And you have to make like prototypes and stuff, and you have to like compile all of that in a presentation, and you have to submit that presentation to the recruiter. So the recruiter will then send your presentation to the designers, they'll evaluate it, and if they like it, then they'll call you back for a further interview. Does that answer your question, Lillian?
We also have
yes, thank you. Oh, sorry.
No.
So may I ask? So the design challenges are not always included for intern application, but like app critique is always included, right?
No, I wouldn't say it is always included. So every company has different final rounds. PwC had 2 behavioral rounds, no portfolio presentation. Facebook had 1 portfolio presentation and 1 app critique. Amazon had portfolio presentation and I think behavioral round. So it differs. It varies from company to company. They'll probably sometimes they'll just have portfolio presentations. Probably they'll have like a combination of those final rounds, which I said. And design challenges usually before the final round, where they are sending that design challenge out to everyone and trying to shortlist a few people. So design challenge is usually before, uh, like before sometimes the recruiter call, or it's either a recruiter call or a design challenge. So that is kind of used to shortlist candidates, and then all these portfolio presentations, app critics, all these interviews are usually like final rounds.
Okay, thank you so much. I also want to ask, how long will the like large companies like Facebook and Amazon respond to our resumes if we got a chance for the interview? Thank you.
So I had applied to Facebook in, I think, mid-August, and I received a reply from the recruiter, I think, on 30th August. Amazon, I think I applied in mid-September. I think that is when their applications had opened up. And I think I received a reply from Amazon, I think like 2 weeks back. So it was like after a month or something. So yeah, it does take time. Like I think what these companies do is like they open the application, they collect a few applications, then they evaluate them, and then they send out interviews. So it just usually takes like around 3 to 4 weeks to respond back, I'd say.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
We have another question, which is in terms of the portfolio, will you mention other team members like we decided, or just use I if it's a group project? Suchin, would you want to elaborate on your question?
Yeah, so I was thinking like if you always like showing like I decide, or is like if it's a group project where you mentioned, because we have different part of work, so maybe I didn't do that part, but should I still like using maybe like I conduct the interview or something like that?
So if you have done it in groups, then I would say that highlight a little bit about what you did. So if you conducted interview as a group, you can obviously say that yes, we did interviews as a group, but what did you do? So you can say that okay, all of us interviewed, I don't know, like 10 participants, and I was responsible like interviewing 2 or 3 out of them. So if the teamwork is relevant to the story you're telling, yes, do mention the teamwork, but don't forget to like highlight what your contribution was, because I think even in portfolios they're trying to understand what you did and not what the team did. So highlighting again your contribution and your role is something which is super important.
Yeah, because sometimes like for example, if we are doing a decision, maybe it's like the group decided, like maybe we're using a protocol or something. So is it okay to say like how to say that, like because everyone decided the decision?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, you can definitely say that yes, this was like when we are making decisions, this was like all of the group collectively decided on one thing. But if that there was a design decision where the probably the idea was something which was yours, then you can highlight that I was the one who kind of proposed this, and then the group kind of iterated on that, or the group kind of decided that yes, this is what we should do because we evaluated the pros and cons.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No problem.
We have another question, Simran. Someone is asking, how do you prepare for the behavioral, and is the behavioral round before or after the portfolio presentation?
Again, a good question. So it can be anything. So final rounds are, sometimes it can be literally like behavioral first, and then say the portfolio presentation afterwards. Sometimes portfolio presentations can be before and behavioral can be afterwards. So the order is little tricky and it depends on the company. So behavioral questions are usually they ask you situation based questions. For example, was there a situation in your entire design career where you had demonstrated leadership? Was there a situation where you had a problem and you didn't know how to solve? Was there a situation where you had conflict in the team, and how did you go about solving that? So all of these questions are something which are usually asked in behavioral rounds.
that I'm sure would be helpful. We have 1 minute left, so we can take one last quick question if anybody would want to come off mute or type it in the chat box, and then we could end. And meanwhile, it would really mean a lot to us if you all could give us feedback. The link to the feedback form is in the description box. It really helps us curate better events and get more people like Simran who can share their experiences. So we would love your feedback, and yeah, please go ahead and click on the link in the chat box.
May I ask a question?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure, go ahead.
Yeah, this is the application, like filling the form part. Should we choose? We need like a sponsor in the future.
That is a tough
Well-
question. So, I don't know, Sejal, are you recording this? So I would say that for big companies, I know that they provide sponsorship, like visa sponsorship. So I was like, yes, they do kind of provide. Said that yes, I require sponsorship, because when they say future, they mean H1Bs and stuff like that. So yes, it is like you would want to answer yes to that question, because as an international student, for H1B, you might require the visa. I would say that it is always better to answer yes, because if you say no, and when people like I have actually answered no to that question, and I got a recruiter call for one of the company, but the first question the recruiter asked me is, would you require a sponsorship? And I said, I don't require it for the internship, but I would require it for the future. So she was like, no, Simran, we are looking for somebody, an intern, so that we can convert them full time. So even if you answer no, they are probably going to reject you in the future. So it's okay to answer like yes.
I have something to add to that. It's very funny sometimes when you when you put no and then they decide to interview you again, like the first question they're going to ask is, would you require sponsorship? So some people will actually go ahead and complete the interview for the sake of it, but will definitely not offer you. But some people would probably end the call in like 5 minutes, say like, I'm sorry, we cannot move ahead, but it was nice meeting you. That actually happened with me today, so it was funny.
Yeah, it's like you're wasting your time and then the interviewer's time as well. So, and there are a lot of companies which do offer sponsorship, so it's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Hinal.
Thank you
Thanks
so,
for coming.
so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So thank you so much for coming, and I hope you all enjoyed it. And I would like to thank Simran for first of all coming and like sharing her experiences, and it was super helpful. Yeah, so see you all on the next event, I guess, and we can hang in here for 5 minutes in case you want to ask more questions. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. We would love
Thank you,
feedback, and
everyone.
yeah.